And we're doing our second annual virtual conference. I'm hope that doesn't become a habit of having to say that all the time. I'm looking forward to getting back in person with everybody. Oh man, I miss the opportunity to see and hear everyone, and gosh, just the camaraderie that we get to have when we're together, and I so miss that. But this year's conference, I think, is aptly named Our Community Showing Grace by Staying in Place. And also the youth conference, Embrace the Unexpected. I think that's one of my favorite titles in a long time, and it certainly sums up independent living. Expect and embrace the unexpected. Oh gosh, we've been gone for so long. I'm trying to think of where to start. I guess one of the first things that I want to do is stick with tradition. Sometimes tradition is a good thing. So as has been tradition with the April for many, many years, probably 20 or so, we have always started our conference off with a Native American blessing. And I'm proud to say that this year, the United States has even caught up with us. And we now have a day in October that is recognized Indigenous Peoples Day. So I think maybe April's been ahead of the game for quite some time. But today, I'm thrilled to have Stephen Morales with us. Stephen is the co-chair of the American Indian Center of Arkansas. And man, it's been a long time since I got to introduce somebody from Arkansas. So I'm really thrilled that we have Stephen with us. He is of Cherokee and Sioux background. And Stephen, if you would like to join me, I would love to turn this stage over to you.
Osio Nagada, that means hello everybody, how are you all doing? I'm honored to be here, and also to the April organization, just hearing how you had said that y'all's organization has honored Native Americans for the previous years, before the US. So I want to say that that's a blessing, and we greatly appreciate you. You know, in this world today, we live together, we all bleed red. And so part of the song that I'm going to sing later on is a Four Direction song. And in that song, it talks about how that the circle of life is infinity. And also it divides in the four directions, which also is separating the four primary ethnicities of the world. But they all meet in the middle, showing that we're all one. But I'm a little random. I'm a retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant, veteran and Purple Heart recipient. I was wounded in combat in 2006, and I'm the current commander of the Cherokee Nation's Veteran Affairs and Color Guard. You know, historically, our land here in Arkansas was home to several different tribes: the Cherokee, the Caddo, and the Quapaw. And anytime when any organization comes in and they give that honor to them, that's a real blessing, because here in Arkansas alone, there's now several casinos that have started to come up where the tribes are starting to try to start to stake their claim in the land and to try to grow. And again, I'm just so honored to be here, guys. And the first prayer I want to do a prayer. It's going to be in Cherokee. I speak both the Cherokee and my Lakota Sioux language. And so I'm going to do a prayer for everybody, and then I'll do English translation afterwards. Please join me in prayer and bow your heads. Ogi doda, kale yelati aye, ora helegi toi, te deski he hoga, wado leski toi, te cheski te tlo goga, yaslo, widekrin nagada nevi, helinika, amen. Our Father, which in heaven, we thank you for bringing us together today safely and caring for all of us in a good way. Amen. The song I'm going to sing for you guys today is that Four Direction song. Now, the important thing about this song is that at the start of all of our ceremonies. Everything that we do, we start off giving prayers to the four directions, and not the hokey way, just trying to be, but we do it in the same ways our ancestors did for hundreds of years and generations. These songs are those same songs that were sung back then that we still keep today. And so if we're not carry on these traditions and these cultures, they're lost. And so this song is a four direction song. One of the main courses you're going to hear in it is going to be Chekiayo, Chekiayo, Tuayango Teo Hey. What that means is, hear our prayers today. So this is going to be a song that I want to do for all of us and for all of you also. In this world, we have a pandemic going on. We have the boarding school atrocities that are being uncovered. And all we can do today is come together and just pray. And so that's what this song is for. Yeah, 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 But oh, Nagada, I appreciate everyone and I appreciate y'all having me. And again, thank you guys. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate that. I look forward to our paths crossing someday. So thank you all. All righty. Up next, let's do some of the important stuff, especially for those of us that are concerned with keeping the doors and lights on. I want to start off this morning and really do a sincere, heartfelt thanks to all of our conference sponsors. And of those, Centene, thank you so much. Anthem, the ADA National Network, Ability 360, the Idaho Silk, the Austin Resource Center for Independent Living, DAC Northwest, the Disability Action Center, and Moscow, Idaho. Also want to thank all of our sponsors, the vendors. We have ILRU and the ILNet. We also have, I'm struggling to read. Thank gosh, I have bifocals on these things. The ADA National Network, the Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living, the RTC Rural, the Rural Institute, Q90, and SIL Suite. So don't forget to visit those folks on the vendor tabs and learn more about all the opportunities that they have there for us. We also have some really great news coming up in just probably a matter of weeks. We have been selected by the Ford Foundation, and we'll be, I can't even talk this morning, we'll be receiving a grant from them to continue to grow and build our youth program. I'm so stoked about this. What this is going to do, it's going to allow us to hire a new youth position to head it up. So keep your eyes open. After the conference is over, we're going to be blasting out a lot of info for folks, and we are looking forward to getting this thing fired up. All righty. What else do I have on this list? I see on my list that says what to expect from the conference online, and that I would be assisted by Mary Willard in doing this section. Mary, you want to help me real quick with this? Because you know how I am. I need all the help I can freaking get. So
thank you, Billy. This is Mary Willard. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am thrilled to be here for yet another conference. Like many of you, I wish we could see each other in person. I could use the hugs, but here we are in virtual land again, and we're doing the very best that we can to make sure that we have a fun-filled week ahead of us. So I'm hoping, Sierra, if possible, that you would share our website for folks. Wonderful. So again, this year we will be virtual. Right now, I have a screen up with the april-rural.org / conference website. And this is going to be your hub for all of this week's events. Right here on the home page, you'll log in, and then you'll have access to all of our fun information. Right on the home page, you'll see our executive director and our current board chair, and they have written some nice welcome letters for you. And then on our next tab is where you'll find our agenda. So when you click on it, it will drop down and have options for each day this week. We will be meeting Monday, October 18th through Friday, October 22nd. And then you can select on the day you would like. And it will have information for all of the week's events. So many of you were able to already log in and find the welcome ceremonies. And when you get into that page, you'll notice that there is a section for all your materials, and that's where you can download any handouts that the presenters might mention. You'll also notice that there's the Zoom login info, and once the event has actually occurred, that section will be replaced for with a recording. So never fear, if you have staff members that wanted to join but couldn't today, they can always come in and join via recording. If we'll go to the next tab, what you'll see is the youth agenda, and I'm only going to briefly touch on that because our youth chair will be following me with that information. And then the next tab over is vendor booths. Like Billy mentioned, we really appreciate everybody in the vendoring area for supporting the virtual April conference. Please feel free to go into any of our vendor booths and you'll find that they have extra resources that you may be interested in. We also are highlighting if those vendors are also giving presentations. And then many of our vendors actually will also be supporting a Zoom room booth. And you can pop in and say hello and ask questions. For those vendors who have elected to not have a Zoom room booth, they have supplied contact info and have said, please reach out, email, call, however is best for you. So then, of course, we have our awards and honors tab, and we're going to be honoring those folks in the closing ceremony. Please feel free to read about our honored award winners this year. Again, we do the Earl Walden Award and the Linda Gonzalez Award. I don't want to spoil too much, but check out the tab. Then we also have our t-shirts for sale. We really want to thank again our partners at 5518 Designs. John and Cassie Wick have been longtime supporters of April, and they are heading up our t-shirt sales again this year. They are, I believe, $20 a piece, and you can, and that includes shipping. So thanks for the great deal, John. And you can check out those t-shirts and order those there. The next tab over is our attendees tab. This year we are using a Slack channel, and you can select the Connect Online in order to select that join Slack channel link, and you can come right into the channel, and hopefully that's an opportunity for you all to connect. It's definitely not the same as the lounge or the lobby of a hotel, but we really wanted to make sure that if you wanted to, you could connect. And don't forget, there's also options of becoming a member and finding us on Facebook there. On our sponsors tab, we have again all of our sponsors Billy mentioned, and we could not do this without you. So please make sure to take a peek at those folks again. And if you see them around in the Slack chat rooms or anywhere else, please give them a thanks from us. It wouldn't be a conference if I didn't mention that our next tab is evaluations. Please make sure that you are evaluating each session. Every single day will have its own link. And then there is an overall general session that will gather your information, your ideas to make us stronger, and the main keynotes and welcomes as well. And then, of course, it takes a village. So our next tab is the many thanks tab. Please feel free to read through all the people that it took to make this event happen. And then last but not least, on the very last tab is our help section. So again, this is going to have all the contacts that you need in order to get support that you might need in order to get through to this week. It will also have some information on our frequently asked questions and also some Zoom tips. So if you are somebody who uses shortcuts only, we have went ahead and added some of those Zoom tips onto our website. Whew. I think that about covers it. And as always, if you have questions, please check out that contacts section and reach out to any of us. And we always love hearing from you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shika and the youth and let them tell you a little bit about what the youth can expect before we get to our final keynote speaker for this morning. Shika,
Hello, can you hear me?
we sure can.
Hey, it's Shika, on the youth chair. I work at Disability Link here in Atlanta, Georgia, in the Tucker area, and I'm the COVID-19 Pandemic Response Team Supervisor and Independent Care Waiver Program ICWP Case Manager. I'm here to tell you some information about our youth kickoff that we have this week for our conference. We did a week-long conference starting on Saturday, October 16, from 4 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern, and Monday to Thursday is 4 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. So come check us out. On Friday, it's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern, and come back Saturday to do some fun wrap up and a fun Jeopardy game from 4 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. Also check out our t-shirt sales and congratulate all of the scholarships winners that we have this year. The topics that we have this year, the theme is embrace the unexpected, like what Billy said, and my pronouns are she, hers, and I'm really excited to be here. We have great speakers for moving out, advocacy, and I'm really excited to be here. So thank you, everyone. And I would also like to thank my director, Kim Gibson, and also Sierra for helping us out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shika. You know, usually whenever I'm have the opportunity to have the microphone, I might have a guitar or something else, but I wanted to do something different today. Almost went with a costume to pull it off, but I want to do a poem, some written word, a little beatnik style. But I wanted to share something with you. I've been thinking over the course of this COVID pandemic, when we're all alone and we're having time to think, and just wondering what is wrong with people sometimes, and we all seem to be at wit's end. So I just wanted to take some time and reflect on a little bit. I call this story Cat in the Hat. I've read a lot of stories that taught me this and that, but some of the best advice I ever got came from the Cat in the Hat. There'll always be something. I know this is true, because right out of the box came thing one and thing two. Now, you might not know where you're going, but don't forget where you've been, because history repeats itself again and again. Keep your eyes on the prize. The truth will always win, and do your best to be your best and be a good friend to the end. Today, you are you, and that is truer than true. There's no one alive that's youer than you. Now, always remember to follow the golden rule and live each day like it's the day that they'll remember you. Now, you might not know where you're going, but don't forget where you've been, because history repeats itself again and again. Now, keep your eyes on the prize. The truth will always win, and do your best to be your best and be a good friend to the end. So thank you. I'm not sure what I want to go from there, but thank you all. It's always weird whenever I don't have any, I don't see anybody. So I'm going, boy, either that sucked or people liked it. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and go, people loved it. Yeah. But anyway, this morning we are going to have our keynote this morning. Has she joined us yet, Mary? I think we're running just a few minutes in advance. And I'll take that as
No,
a
she hasn't joined us yet.
all righty. Well, let me see. What else do we want to talk about, Mary? What have you got? I was going to sing a song. Mary, would you like to enlighten us just a tad bit more on the Ford Foundation stuff to get people's juices flowing? I love it when I put her on the spot.
Sorry, I was reaching out to Allison. Actually, I would love it if Sierra would talk a little bit about it because she's been taking the lead on it. And then I'll private chat you what needs to go next. Sierra, do you want to talk a little bit about the Ford Foundation and what folks can expect?
Yeah. So hello again, everybody. This is Sierra again. So we are very excited that we were able to receive that support from Ford Foundation. We are really excited. We've been doing some youth work for years now, and we've had some brainstorms in the back that we have been putting together with many youth that have come through and have continued on. A lot of them are leaders now with NIL and other parts of the community as well. And we're excited to be putting some of those activities and programming pieces into action. So we've been hearing your feedback for many years now, and we're excited that we're going to bring on a new youth person to ensure that that position stays as a peer position and then continues on with carrying that out. We're going to start asking, be checking out your emails. Starting next year, we're going to be asking you what does the community need? We know that there's a lot of skill-based learning that still needs to take place, and that youth still want to have interest in different areas or still want to learn in new places. And so that's somewhere where we're going to ask, tell us what you want to learn, and we're going to figure out how we can plug those pieces in, how we're going to assist young people with continuing their leadership skills, and some of those pieces and key parts of the pie, if you would, places on how you can grow that maybe haven't been discussed about, haven't been a part of the IL skill workshops that you may have attended before, or the youth leadership forums. We're trying to expand on what has been happening and what youth have been involved with. We also are very excited to grow our conference in new ways. We'll be expanding what we know as the youth conference now. We're going to be expanding that. For many years, we've heard that youth come again and again, year after year. I see some of you in the attendee list now that have been here before, and we want to continue helping you grow. And sometimes that means a next step up. So we have the youth conference, and if you're ready to jump right into leadership and IL, fantastic. We want to figure out ways to support you, and that's what that position and the programming will do. But if you're not quite ready for that, we're also going to be spending some time on building some of those next level skills, if you would. I know that I continue to need new things as I continue to develop within this profession and this community. So that's what we're hoping to continue. But I'm excited that we are pulling in a whole new round of young people this year to add to those conversations, to add to those experiences. We're going to be also pulling from young people that have been before and are really in that mentoring role, and they will be able to really provide mentoring throughout the year for young people, so that we're keeping people involved, but we're also learning and growing from each other. That's what IL is based off of, is peer support and peer mentoring. And we really believe that at April. That's why we've changed so many of our conversations from presentations to conversations and ways to connect with other people that are going through what we're going through. And so in that same spirit, that's what we're really hoping to do with the youth program, is continue to have some of those youth mentors guiding and supporting, I guess is the best word, supporting those young people that are coming up and that are new to IL or new to April. So we're really excited about that. And without giving all the goods away, I think that's gonna be all we'll say for now, but please be on the lookout. That job announcement will be coming out next week, and we really, really would love, if you don't have somebody, if you're not interested, if you could send that out, and if you could just share that far and wide. We want to make sure that as many people can see that may be interested in that can continue. So I thank you for all that you are doing and welcome again. And I'll turn it back over to Mary or Billy.
Perfect. I'll jump in there. I believe that we have our keynote speaker with us this morning, and in true IL fashion, you always have an agenda, but whether you stick to it is another story. Sometimes time has no meaning, but I'm going to get right to the heart of the matter now and introduce our keynote speaker. Because one of the things that being the director of April and just being an IL in general, one of the things that I love the most is the opportunity to work with so many different organizations, so many different businesses, universities, that we get to learn so much from each of these players. And it's given me the opportunity to meet a lot of different people over the years. And our next speaker is one of them. So I've known and respected our speaker for many, well, I won't tell her age, so many days that we've known each other. And I've absolutely admired all of her work. Her commitment to the ideals of independent living are evident throughout her career. A couple of things that really jump out to me as I've watched her over the years has been her work in the realm of home and community-based services. Also, she has a long list. I can't read right there. I'm just going to keep going. She also has a long list of well-deserved accolades and accomplishments and appointments. And but I believe the appointment she's serving in now may be the most prestigious yet. So Allison Barkoff was sworn into the office as the principal deputy administrator on January 20th, 2021, and is currently serving as acting administrator and assistant secretary for aging. In this capacity, she provides executive direction, leadership, guidance, and coordination for ACL programs nationwide and advises HHS secretary on issues affecting individuals with disabilities and older adults. Wow, that's a mouthful, but she wears a lot of hats and wears them incredibly well. I am certainly proud to have her in my friend category. So I turn the floor over to you, Allison.
Thank you so much, Billy, for that introduction, and for Mary Willard for inviting me to join today. Let me start with a visual description. I am a middle-aged white woman with medium-length curly brown hair, and I'm wearing a blue blouse and a silver necklace, and I have a white background with the ACL and HHS logos behind me. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I wish I would have had my camera on for that introduction from Billy. I was smiling and laughing the whole time. So thank you, Billy, for that. As Billy mentioned, my name is Allison Barkoff, and I am serving as the acting administrator and assistant secretary for aging at ACL. And we in ACL really appreciate our partnership with April and the support and leadership that you provide to the independent living programs and your focus on people who are living in rural areas, which is so critical, given that there are so many people with disabilities in rural areas and the unique barriers that folks in rural areas face. I'm really excited to be here speaking with you all today and want to share some priorities of the Biden-Harris administration and the way that ACL is working with all of our partners to move forward on these priorities. For those of you who I don't know well yet, let me start by telling you a little bit about my background. As Billy mentioned, I was privileged to join the Administration for Community Living on Inauguration Day and have been serving as the acting administrator since that time. The mission of ACL, which is to support opportunities for community living for all, has been my own life's mission. And I know it's a mission that I share with each one of you who are part of the independent living movement. I've been involved in advocacy around disability rights and community living for literally my entire life. A little more than 40 years ago, I joined the disability community as a sibling of a brother with an intellectual disability in a world where we were told the only place for him was an institution. This was a time before there was any such thing as home and community-based services, and just a few years after even school doors were open to children with disabilities. And advocating alongside disabled people, families, cross-disability advocates across the country, I fought for community services to help disabled people live, work, and fully participate in their communities and to make choices for themselves about the lives they want to live. I've worked on policy change at the national and state levels, and Centers for Independent Living and the national organizations that represent the IL movement have always been key partners in my work. My work is always centered on the principle that community living is possible for everyone, regardless of type of disability, level of support need, or age. Community living is not only an important policy goal, but I really approach it by the fact that it is a civil and human right. And I've spent much of my career working to make this promise enshrined in the ADA, which so many in the IL movement were a part of creating, really working to make the ADA's promise a reality. One of the last times I was in federal government service was during the Obama administration, when I was brought in to create and lead the Department of Justice's first program to enforce the civil rights of people with disabilities to live, work, and play in the community using Olmstead, the Supreme Court's decision. And so much of the work we did together was about using legal tools to get people out of institutions and other segregated settings and preventing them from going in the first place. And again, CILs have been such important partners in the Olmstead litigation work that I've done. We've made a lot of progress over the last several decades. As I mentioned, 40 years ago, there was nothing for really to support people with disabilities in the community. And now every single state offers home and community-based services, or HCBS. And that's why I've really seen the transformation from people like my brother being told there's nowhere for you to go but an institution, to, as an adult, living the life that he wants in an apartment with a roommate that he chose, a valued employee at a workplace, with a great career, a girlfriend, an active social life, and an active advocate in his own right. But our work is far from complete with too many people who don't have those opportunities. Hundreds of thousands of disabled people still in institutions or at risk of entering one while they sit on waiting lists, and many people who don't have the opportunity to have full choice and control over their lives. They can't find accessible housing, they face barriers to employment or discrimination in accessing healthcare. So we do have so much more work to do together. And that's one of the reasons I was really honored to accept my appointment from President Biden, because I think the work that we have to do right now before us to support all people to live and meaningfully participate in their communities has never been more important, both because the devastating impact that COVID-19 has had on our community, but also because the incredible opportunity right before us to make big change. So before I jump into talking about ACL and administration priorities, I really just want to start by saying thank you. I am so appreciative of all of the incredible work you do each and every day to support the independent living of people with disabilities, particularly those in rural areas. Not only the work you did before the pandemic, but the incredibly hard, tireless, and important work that you have done during COVID, and the work that you will do as we start turning to recovery from COVID. Truly working alongside so many CILs throughout the pandemic, both before I joined the government and after, your work has literally been a matter of life and death. You have supported people living in all across the country, but particularly rural cells in rural areas, saving lives. And people who are disabled and living in rural areas have been so hard hit by the pandemic. Rural areas tend to have more people with disabilities, more people in congregate settings like nursing homes and prisons, the very places that have the highest risks of contracting and dying from COVID. And we've seen the rural healthcare infrastructure, which already is stretched thin, become overwhelmed by large numbers of COVID-19 patients. We've sadly seen rationing of care and people having to travel incredibly far distances to get treatments. And again, witnessing the work of the CILs across this nation and the rural parts of our country has been incredible. Y'all quickly pivoted to face the pandemic head on, serving as a lifeline for so many. Things like helping consumers access technology, hygiene items, PPE, food, transportation, in-home services, vaccines, or just being there to support people on the other end of a phone line while people were so isolated. You did incredible work keeping people out of institutions by paying rent, or helping others transition out of institutions that were facing COVID outbreaks. You've worked to help get equal access to COVID testing, care, and treatment, and now you're helping people get vaccinated. So for all you do, thank you, and I am so grateful. And I just want to say we and ACL know the value and impact of your work and the huge unmet demand that exists now and will continue well beyond COVID. And that's one reason why one of the first things that I did when I got here, when I was working with the leadership team on putting together President Biden's fiscal year 22 budget, we pushed so hard for significant increases in funding for the independent living programs. Of course, we are still waiting for Congress to act on that budget, but I'm really hopeful that we will have more resources to help you do this incredible work. I want to turn now to speak to you about a few of the major Biden-Harris administration priorities that impact people with disabilities. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing together to fight COVID, and then our work to expand access to home and community-based services, or HCBS. Then talk about our work to increase access to affordable, accessible housing, and our work around competitive integrated employment. And then finally talk about the work we're doing to advance equity. Starting with COVID, it has absolutely been the priority for ACL and the administration from the day I arrived here. I know I don't have to say to all of you how devastatingly impacted disabled people have been in every single way. We make up the biggest group of people who have been at risk for infections and deaths. We've faced barriers to accessing vaccines and been socially isolated. And literally within the first few days of this administration, it was really, I would say, just so important and a testament to the advocacy of the disability community's advocacy that the president issued a national strategy for COVID and a set of executive orders that included a significant focus on so many of the major issues facing people with disabilities and older adults, such as access to PPE and testing, preventing discrimination and accessing life-saving treatment, and addressing the needs of the direct care workforce. This has been an all of government effort, and we in ACL have been working closely with the White House, the HHS COVID Task Force, the Equity Task Force, which includes representation from the disability community, the Centers for Disease Control, and others to ensure that the unique needs of disabled people and older adults are included in every single COVID response policy from this administration. One of the top priorities since I arrived has been ensuring that every single person with a disability and older adult who wants a vaccine can get one. We know that too many people face barriers to getting a vaccine, whether that's because of inaccessible websites or sites that are physically inaccessible or a lack of transportation. Hopefully y'all saw a report that recently came out from the CDC showing that people with disabilities are more willing than non-disabled people to receive vaccinations, yet still remain less vaccinated than the US population as a whole. That clearly points to access as an ongoing problem. Data from the Research and Training Center on Disability in Rural Communities have revealed that staff working in congregate settings, particularly those in rural communities, are still vaccinated at alarmingly low rates. All of this is why in March, President Biden announced $100 million of funding from the CDC to ACL to fund our disability and networks and aging networks on the ground, including, of course, Centers for Independent Living to assist with vaccine access. And that funding has helped y'all do really great work, like helping people register, provide transportation or in-person supports at vaccination sites, identifying people who need in-home vaccinations, and addressing vaccine hesitancy. People in rural areas face additional access barriers, and CILs have been playing a really critical role in ensuring that disabled people in rural areas can get vaccines. Just to give one example, the Northern Regional Center for Independent Living in upstate New York collaborated with county legislatures to help people without internet access and without email addresses make and get transportation to vaccine appointments. And they work to develop vaccine clinics in rural parts of their service area. In another example of great collaboration between ACL's disability networks, in rural areas in North Carolina, CILs have been partnering with other ACL networks, including the Protection and Advocacy Agency, Disability Rights North Carolina, to do vaccine clinics targeted to people with disabilities, families, and providers of in-home services. ACL used the CDC funds not only to go directly to helping CILs and other networks provide this critical on-the-ground support, but we also quickly set up a national hotline called DIAL, the Disability Information and Assistance Line, to help connect people with disabilities with local organizations who can help them with access to vaccines, as well as other needed community services. And I truly want to thank April for their partnership in helping us establish this line and ensure that it's meeting the needs of our disability community. DIAL staff have been fielding questions from over 300 people a week across the country, and many of these referrals are going to CILs. And while we are keeping our focus on making sure that every person who is willing will get vaccinated, we are at the same time now working with our colleagues at the CDC on boosters. For so long, and I was one of the people yelling alongside y'all from the rooftops that people with disabilities in a whole range of congregate settings are equally at risk. And it was incredibly frustrating early on in the pandemic that there was so much focus only on people in nursing homes without focusing on the whole range of congregate, residential, and day settings where people with disabilities were at risk. In response to this incredibly strong advocacy by the disability community and by ACL, we have been working with the CDC to make sure that people in all types of congregate settings, not just nursing homes, are eligible for boosters and that those settings can participate in the Federal Pharmacy Partnership Program. I hope all of y'all have seen that in the recommendations for boosters that have come out so far, it is not only people in nursing homes, but the recommendation is for anyone who is in a long-term care setting. And there's a whole list of the broad range of congregate settings that fall under that on ACL's webpage or linked directly from the CDC's page. Just a couple other things that I want to mention that we've been working on related to COVID and the disability community in addition to vaccine access. We know that so many folks are concerned about long COVID, and it may very well be the biggest growth that we face in the disability community since polio. This summer, ACL contributed to a government-wide toolkit on long COVID, ensuring that people experiencing limitations due to long COVID know how to access information, resources, and services offered by ACL's disability networks and programs, including, of course, SILS. We've also worked closely with HHS's Office for Civil Rights to ensure that state and hospital policies do not discriminate against people with disabilities when they need life-saving care. And this has been a particularly important issue as rural hospitals get stretched thin and have to make choices about rationing care. We've also worked closely with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, to make sure that when nursing homes put in place visitation policies tied to COVID outbreaks, that it does not prevent ACL's networks, including SILS, protection and advocacy agencies, and long-term care ombudsmen, from being able to do the critical work that you do with people in those settings, including helping transition people back to the community. So that's just a touch of some of the work that we are doing and doing alongside y'all related to COVID. A second priority for the administration and ACL is expanding access to home and community-based services, or HCBS. COVID has absolutely laid bare the risks of institutions, with more than a third of deaths in nursing homes and other institutions. And it has created a national urgency like never before to strengthen and expand home and community-based services. At ACL, we know that it was long before COVID that there was a need to expand community services. Too many people are still in institutions, on waiting lists, or not receiving the level of support that they need. And for so long, quality and access to services has been impacted by the long-standing direct support workforce crisis caused by incredibly high turnover rates because of the low pay and lack of benefits in these really important jobs. It has been really incredible over the last several months, seeing the administration and Congress and even the broader public agreeing that the time is now to address these critical issues around supporting and expanding community services. The administration and Congress have already worked together to take some initial first steps to expand community services, in large part because of the nonstop advocacy throughout all of 2020 by the disability community, including April and so many of y'all. Congress, working closely with the administration, finally recognized the dire need to provide funding to help people with disabilities and older adults stay safe in the community throughout the pandemic and out of institutions where COVID was rampant. The American Rescue Plan, signed by President Biden in March, provided $12.7 billion, that's billion with a B, to states' Medicaid-funded home and community-based services through an increase in the federal match that the government pays. And this money is so important. It can be used to address a wide range of urgent and critical needs that I'm sure y'all are seeing in each of your states. States can use this money to add new HCBS services. They can provide services to people who are sitting on waiting lists, and they can use this funding to help transition people from institutions back to the community. This funding is really important in taking some initial steps to support the direct care workforce and can be used for things like increasing pay or benefits, recruitment and training activities, or expanding self-direction programs. I know so many of you played an important role in shaping your state's initial proposals about how to use this additional funding, and I encourage you to stay engaged as this funding is getting implemented. President Biden has been very clear that the funding in the American Rescue Plan was just a down payment on what we need to truly address the HCBS infrastructure in this country. That's why the president's Build Back Better plan proposed $400 billion. Yes, it's B again, $1 billion investment in states' community service systems and the direct care workforce. And this plan also proposes to permanently authorize the Money Follows the Person program, which again, April and the SILs have been so crucial in this advocacy and in implementing this program that helps transition people out of institutions to their communities. What the president has been proposing in this plan would truly, truly be a game changer. It would fundamentally change the institutional bias that exists in our long-term care system and make community living a reality for so many people with disabilities after decades of, at best, slowly chipping away from at this institutional bias. Congress is currently working, literally as we speak, on legislation based on the Build Back Better plan through a process called reconciliation. And as you probably know, if you read the papers or watch the news, the final framework is still being negotiated. So what is my one message to you? Keep up your awesome work. Keep up the work that you're doing, educating lawmakers and the public about the importance of home and community-based services, and keep sharing your stories. Let people know, what was it like sitting on a wait list while you were waiting for the services that you need? If you're someone who was forced to live in a nursing home or other institution, talk about what that experience was like, or how your life changed when you finally got access to community services. I want to also briefly mention, and again, this is another important place where we'd love to have more SIL engagement, that the administration is committed to strong implementation of the HCBS settings rule. This is a rule that for the first time set basic standards for community integration and inclusion in all home and community-based services. The goal is to ensure that everyone who receives HCBS gets the full benefits of community living. It truly is about the basics, making sure people have access to the community, that they can make choices in their daily lives, have opportunities to work, get to choose when they eat, what they eat, who their roommate is, if they want a roommate. And again, I think that it's really important that we work together. ACL is working very closely with CMS in implementing this rule, and all of y'all states are in the process of implementing their state plans to bring their home and community-based service systems into compliance with the rules requirements by next March. Stakeholders play a crucial role in giving input to these state plans, and we and ACL really want to work with you over the next year and a half as your states are hopefully making big systems change using this rule. I want to pivot now to touch on another top priority for ACL and the administration, which is expanding access to affordable, accessible housing. This is often one of the biggest barriers to community living and a reason why people oftentimes get stuck in institutional settings. Finding accessible, affordable housing is a struggle across the entire country, but I want to recognize that it is a particularly big problem in rural areas where there's both a higher concentration of people with disabilities and oftentimes less resources. The stock of affordable housing units has been shrinking for so many years, and competition for that limited supply of affordable rental units and rising rents is causing a huge problem. A recent report found that there were only 37 affordable and available homes for every 100 extremely low income renter households nationwide. And under 1% of the US housing stock is wheelchair accessible, and less than 5% can accommodate people who have moderate mobility disabilities, making finding units that are both affordable and accessible a huge challenge. In some cases, states are able to find the resources, the community services to help people transition from institutions, like by using programs like Money Follows the Person. But because Medicaid can't pay for housing, the challenge of finding housing becomes the reason that these crucial transitions out of institutions either slow down or even don't happen. So when we work together to coordinate affordable, accessible housing with increased access to home and community-based services, that's how we can bring together the infrastructure to help people live independently in the community. And partnership is key to that coordination. It requires partnership at federal, state, and local levels between housing and service systems. And again, we know the IL community is so important to that work. At ACL, one of our most important partnerships right now is with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Within the first few weeks of the administration, leadership from ACL and HUD launched a working group to partner on coordinating services and housing resources. We've since pulled in the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and others. And we have now started working with the White House Domestic Policy Council, which is really critical because it shows the administration is fully committed to this effort. And our HHS HUD collaboration is key to advancing priorities of the Biden-Harris administration, like expanding accessible, affordable housing, addressing homelessness, which is disproportionately made up of disabled people, expanding home and community-based services, and addressing the institutional bias in our long-term care system. One of our first focus of this partnership has been helping states and communities take advantage of the opportunities in the American Rescue Plan, including both the investments I mentioned for home and community-based services and behavioral health services, and significant investments in housing assistance. In July, ACL led, working with partners across HHS and HUD, a joint fact sheet called Advancing Community Living Through Coordination Between Housing and Voluntary Community Services, explaining to stakeholders how to leverage these new funding opportunities. And we're working now to take our federal coordination and support to states and local partners to the next step. Later this year, we will be launching a housing and services resource center focused on people with disabilities, older adults, and people experiencing homelessness. And this resource center will be a centralized source of information, guidance, and research about how to coordinate access to housing and services, a forum for peer-to-peer sharing between states and communities, and a hub for federal agencies to provide and align our technical assistance through webinars, fact sheets, and other resources. And we are really looking forward to partnering across the board with states, with tribal nations, with local governments, with our disability and aging networks, disability, aging, and homeless advocates, as well as homelessness continuums of care, public housing authorities, and housing providers and developers. We are also working to address the lack of accessibility in housing by recognizing that there are, in part of our housing stock, units that are modifiable. meaning we can make them accessible. So in partnership with our grantees, we have funded the development of the Home Modification Information Network, which is a state-by-state inventory of home modification policies, funding sources, and programs. Next, I want to turn to our focus in ACL on competitive integrated employment. I know I don't have to say to all of y'all how crucial employment is to community living. People with disabilities can and want to work, yet they often experience significant barriers to employment. And again, those barriers are compounded in rural areas. Disabled employees are also the hardest hit during economic downturns and are typically the last to recover. In fact, data has shown that people without disabilities have been almost twice as likely to rebound to pre-pandemic employment levels than people with disabilities. At ACL, we know that when people with disabilities have careers, they not only are on the surest path to economic mobility and independence, but are also happier and healthier. And that companies that engage and really outreach to and support the employment of people with disabilities have higher profits and better retention. And again, CILs play such a crucial role in supporting people in finding and obtaining jobs. Based on the most recent data from CILs, y'all provided vocational services to nearly 35,000 consumers, and almost 73,000 consumers received skills training and life skills training that are an important part of gaining and sustaining employment. CILs also play an important role around transition age youth. And again, just to give another example, the CIL in Savannah, Georgia, Living Independence for Everyone, Inc., working with rural areas in their service area, has launched a Student for Life program that prepares transition age students with disabilities for post-secondary lives and connects them and their families with agencies and resources to assist in that important transition to adulthood. Life offered classes in partnership with 3 schools and 3 community sites, including throughout the pandemic, which really just highlights a way of creating replicable models and for integrating into existing community organizations and efforts. At ACL, we are also working to support improved employment outcomes for disabled workers. This month, we announced 7 new projects for the Community Collaborations for Employment program. These grants focus on strengthening collaboration at the local level to facilitate transition of youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities as they seek competitive integrated employment and independent living. We also are working with employers on strategies for recruiting and retaining workers with disabilities. I think it's next week or later this week, we will be in the final stages of our Inclusive Business Pipeline Challenge, where we are awarding prize money to ideas from employers that can be used not only by them, but across the business sector. And from more than 50 proposals later this week, 3 will be competing for the grand prize. And one of these companies is working with a CIL. The 3 companies are Mentra, KBMG, and Afala Technologies, who's working with the Resource Center for Accessible Living, a CIL in New York. We know that change happens at the state and local level, and many of you are already partnering in your advocacy and systems change work around employment with other disability networks. And our collective voice is making a difference. I've watched just closely over the last several years, going from 0 states that have prohibited sub-minimum wage to, with the announcement last week from California, 13 states and a number of local cities and localities that have prohibited sub-minimum wage and are investing in expanding competitive integrated employment. To fuel this progress and this collaboration at the state and local level, ACL has established the Disability Employment TA Center, which brings together all of ACL's grantees, including SILS. This TA Center has already created learning collaboratives to share strategies and best practices from across the country on topics from state policy, activities, to how to work to transition people from sheltered workshops to real work for real pay, and so much more. If you haven't been in touch with the Disability Employment Center, I really encourage you to visit their website. I was just looking at it over the weekend, and there are so many resources targeted specifically to SILS and some great ideas and strategies there. I want to close out my remarks today by leaving you with a central message on one last priority from the Biden-Harris administration. We are working to advance equity in every single thing that we do. Starting with an executive order on advancing equity on day one, federal agencies have been building an equity lens into our work. The administration, really importantly, has defined equity with an intersectional focus, centering racial justice, but also calling out that people may have multiple identities and be multiply marginalized, and specifically referencing both people with disabilities and people living in rural areas as underserved communities. So that means that our work must identify and address the different barriers that disabled people face if they also are a person of color, or LGBTQ, or speak a primary language other than English, or live in a rural area, and on and on. At ACL, we are trying to look through an equity lens at everything that we do, at our programs, at our networks, and at the policies surrounding people with disabilities and older adults. Our research institute, NIDLR, is leading several initiatives and plans to launch several more, focused on data, research, and knowledge translation on inequities and access to home and community-based services. In our administration on disabilities, we have done long-standing work to support programs in being culturally competent and have strengthened their ability to work through an intersectional lens. Again, we're really looking to how can we strengthen and expand that work. We have also recently been investing in projects focusing on health inequities, such as the work of the ACL-funded Center for Dignity and Healthcare for People with Disabilities, projects focused on equitable access to mental health services, and partnerships to address inequities in the data we have on people with disabilities. Equally as important as the work that we're doing inside of ACL is the work that we're doing across HHS and the broader government, where we are working to ensure that disability is considered in all equity-focused initiatives, particularly those focused on health disparities. And we're really looking forward to working with you, lifting up and helping replicate the work that y'all are doing, both April and your individual SILs on equity issues, and hearing from you your ideas about what further actions we can take in this area. So let me just end by saying, I know I've thrown a lot at you in a short amount of time, but I truly feel like we have an unprecedented opportunity to work together before us. Truly, as someone who has spent decades doing this work, it really feels like we are on the cusp of a once of a generation opportunity. After decades of just slowly chipping away at the institutional bias, we finally have some proposals and some initial actions that are big, systemic reform. It is the time for us to think big and bold and to collaborate and work together with every tool we have in our toolbox. And we must keep our focus on the future, on a post-COVID society and what we want that to look like, even as we are honoring the pain and sadness that our community has endured. I really think it is so important now more than ever that we have big tables, that we work together with stakeholders from the disability and the aging and the labor communities to identify priorities and common ground, because we will need to work together to succeed. I want you to know that we and ACL and I personally am committed to working with all of you to move forward on our shared agenda to achieve equal access to community living and everything that goes with it for all people with disabilities. And as we look ahead, including to our upcoming fiscal year, I am hopeful that we will have even more resources to do this crucial work together. I want to just end by saying thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing across this country. And I really appreciate our collaboration. And with that, I will turn it back to Billy.
Awesome. Am I there? I am there. Hey, thank you so much. My gosh, you were singing out of my hymnal. I know that. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. I know we have you wanted some time for Q&A, and I believe, Sierra, are you going to run Q&A?
I am. Hello,
Right.
everybody.
Let me get my phone off of here.
So really quick, just as a reminder, this is your first Zoom, I'm sure of it. If you want to ask a question, you can do that by going to the Q&A box that is in that menu bar, and you can submit your questions there. If you are on the phone or would like to voice your question, you can select the raise hand in that same menu bar, or press *9 or Alt-Y if you're using keystrokes. Let's see. So if you would like to ask a question, now would be your time. I'm done with my spiel. And just as you are looking on our website, as she was referencing different websites or different links, those have all been dropped into the chat, but also on our conference website as well. They are already up there, which can answer some of those questions for links that you were trying to find. Scott Burlingame does have the first question. When you talk about improving housing options, have you had discussions around solving the problem of people with disabilities who have a history of eviction, a poor credit history, a criminal background, or other barriers that make finding housing almost impossible?
Yeah, so sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So those are absolutely really, really important barriers that people face. I know from the last time that I was in the administration, HUD has put out guidance on a number of these issues, how to work to make sure that, on the criminal background check, how to make sure that people can still be eligible for housing. And I think there was some guidance that came out a number of years back around that. The credit check, that's something that I know many in the housing world are working on. How do we address some of those barriers? So I think it's actually a really good point to highlight that, this is why we are working with HUD. They have this whole set of policies out there. Maybe some of them really need to be dusted off and lifted up and shared across our networks on what are ways to address some of these common barriers that people face addressing housing challenges. And I will try to see if I can go back and find that guidance, or I'll ask a colleague at HUD. And we are, as part of launching the Housing and Services Resource Center, really one goal is to have one centralized place where we can pull together all of this different guidance. So ACL has put out guidance to our networks on, how to access housing. There's a whole set of HUD guidances. There's guidance that has come out from CMS. The goal is really to organize this whole range of existing guidance in a way that reaches a whole set of stakeholders. But I will follow up, and if I can get that, we'll send it to Sierra and Billy.
Perfect. Thank you. So our the next question, have you heard of any allotments coming down to build more affordable housing in rural areas?
So one of the many, many things that we are all watching, as I mentioned in the reconciliation bill, is huge huge, significant proposals for investment in housing, a whole range of housing, everything from housing vouchers to new affordable housing construction. Again, as I mentioned, for anyone who's watching the news, things are very much in flux. So, there's a combination of what was in the American Rescue Plan that was passed in March, as well as a number of housing resources that were in some of the COVID supplements. And I'm hoping with HUD's fiscal year 22 budget, as well as what may end up in the reconciliation, we will have access to more affordable, accessible housing. I think that one of the links that maybe my colleague Vince might have dropped into the chat is the guidance that we put out in July of this year for the 88th anniversary, together with HHS and HUD. And in that document, it describes some of the housing that came out as part of the American Rescue Plan, as well as includes a link that you can look at each housing authority level, so really at the local and at the state level, about unused housing choice vouchers, which are targeted to people with disabilities. So it was really surprising looking at that. And we have, even in some communities, brought together some state Medicaid and the agencies that run MFP, some of the state and local housing authorities, and some of the CILs and AAAs, because in some communities, there is a really surprisingly large number of unused vouchers. So I would suggest, and again, I can send this link to Billy and Sierra to send around, and Vince just put a link to the fact sheet. But I'd really encourage some of you to look at, are you in places that have some unused vouchers, and how can you work to leverage those? So we are fighting for new resources, but there are also some unused resources that are out there. And the other thing I'll mention in this fact sheet is that because of COVID, there have been emergency transition vouchers. They are targeted primarily to people experiencing homelessness, but people with disabilities who are experiencing homelessness absolutely are covered, and people transitioning from institutions who do not otherwise have a place to go can also access those emergency vouchers. So I'd encourage you to look at that housing fact sheet, and happy to pull together some more resources if there are additional questions.
Awesome. Thank you. There's another one. Is there more we can do to address the prevention of institutionalization as an emergency situation for individuals, i.e. providing resources financially supported by government funding to fill gaps while waiting for waivers and programs?
Yeah, so this has really, really been the ongoing thing. I've spent, as I mentioned, so much of my career on trying to get people out of institutions, but we have to have the resources on the front end to keep people from going in the first place. I do think these steps and these initial investments in expanding home and community-based services and access there is really crucial. And if you are in a state that has long waiting lists, I would really, really encourage you to work with your state on, can you, using these funding from the American Rescue Plan, even put together a small package of services to prevent people from going in to institutions in the first place. I'm not sure if the question was also related to kind of emergencies as in disasters. And I think that's another place that we are really interested in seeing what is it in ACL that we can do. We know that CILs play a really, really important role in responding to disasters. Obviously, COVID has been an incredibly extended disaster, but we know CILs play a crucial role when we're talking about hurricanes and tornadoes and fires and a whole set of issues, which oftentimes, because of a lack of emergency planning and access to resources, can end up with people being forced into institutions. It's an issue that we are working closely with partners at FEMA to think about what ways are there to more quickly leverage some of those emergency resources. And we're working with the National Council on Disability. But I would really be interested in ideas that people have, or ways that you have inserted in your states, working with public health or emergency response in addressing some of those needs. So I think, your question raises both for me, what can we do on the diversion end? What quick resources can we put in place? As well as really thinking about some of the situations that end up forcing people into institutions and emergency situations.
Perfect. Thank you, Allison. Man, you ran us right up on time. Perfect timing. We knew you would be the one to do this. There may be some pop-up questions that came in, but we will get those answered. We will send those to you later if you don't mind, and we will get those answered. Man, I can't thank you enough for being on here with us today, and look forward to many more years of collaboration. And in that, I think.
Thank you again for having me, and thanks everybody again for your incredible work. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.